The tragedy in Colorado in court. Tomorrow morning, accused murderer James Holmes is expected to be charged with 12 counts of first-degree murder, plus a slew of other charges related to the massacre at the Aurora movieplex. This as we now have learned of another victim of this senseless rampage, the miscarried child of Ashley Moser. She's the pregnant survivor who was seriously wounded in the attack. As you may know, her 6-year-old daughter, Veronica, who you see on the right, was killed. But there likely won't be an additional charge because Colorado state law only applies to people who, quote, had been born and alive. Rachel Self is a trial attorney in Boston. David Wohl, defense attorney, joins us from Irvine, California. Welcome to both of you. David, let me start with you.
Hi, Eric.
Thank you.
Hi. What do we expect when this guy's back in court tomorrow morning?
Well, Eric, I don't think there's going to be any plea of guilty or not guilty. There's going to be a declaration of doubt by the defense attorneys that he's not competent to assist them in the defense. What will happen then is he'll be sent to a battery of psychologists to see, in their opinion, whether he is actually competent or not. There could be a trial on that issue. Then when he comes back, let's say he's declared competent, they will then enter a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, and at that time he'll be sent yet to another battery of psychologists to see if he's sane. If he's declared insane, he could end up just like John Hinckley, President Reagan's assailant, living the next 30 years in a state mental hospital. So this is very, very far from a trial on the issue of guilt or innocence.
David, what do you think the chances are of that?
You know, Eric, if he's living in a fantasy land where his reality is a Batman movie and people who are shot simply get up and go home like they do in the movies, then I think there is actually a pretty good chance he'll be found insane.
Rachel, what's your view? I mean, look, others will say he spent, what, 2 months or so, 50 orders of stuff getting into that apartment of the ammunition and the weaponry that he had. They say that showed that it was planned.
Absolutely. I think that it's going to be very difficult to prove. And after Hinckley was shot, there was such an outrage throughout the country that Congress actually changed the law. And Colorado has one of the strictest insanity defense laws out there, where you need to show that you were actually suffering from mental defect at the time of the alleged event, not just drug-induced, but an actual mental illness. And that at that time, you didn't know right from wrong. And even the craziest people out there know generally that to pick up a gun and open fire in a movie theater is wrong. So this is a defense that is generally a defense of last resort, but there's not going to be an alibi defense here. He was at the scene when he was arrested. There's not going to be an identity defense here. He's the only one dressed up like Batman, other than Batman on the screen, loaded to the gills, and he did so much planning in this that it's going to be very difficult. And as the prosecutor, the woman who's prosecuting this case is a very, very tough cookie. She has no hesitation to go for the death penalty, and I think that she's going to go full bore against this guy, and I think that that's what he deserves. He ordered 6,000 rounds of ammunition, prepped for 2 months, had his house booby-trapped, went into the movie, then went out after 15 minutes, geared up, came back in. He knew what he was doing, and I think that this thing is going to be...
David, go ahead.
You know what the problem? Problem is he shows up at that movie theater and he's got his hair orange. He's got a gas mask on, a trench coat. He does this act, this horrendous act, granted, in a way that there's no way he's going to escape. He's living in a fantasy land where literally he's on the set of a movie. The fact that he bought all that ammunition doesn't necessarily mean that he's sane. People who think that when they shoot somebody, they'll get up and walk away as they do in movies, aren't sane. He does not know right from wrong. That's what his lawyers are going to argue, that his world is living on a movie set. Now, granted, Rachel's absolutely right. The insanity defense works about 2% of the time nationwide, so it's a very, very difficult uphill battle, but they don't have any other defense, Eric. So that's the way this case is going, and it could be 3-4 years before we even get to a decision on whether he'll be tried on guilt versus innocence.
Well, finally, apparently he was under some type of psychiatric care by that professor at the University of Colorado. We got that notebook. There's some dispute over what was in it. Rachel, how does that enter into the potential of a mental insanity defense?
Well, I think that what it goes to is the fact that he might have realized what he was doing was wrong, and that's why he mailed the notebook to his treatment provider as a cry for help. And so I think that that notebook is actually going to really hurt the defense of this case, and the question is whether or not it's going to come in, because it is doctor-patient communication, and the defense is already very upset that that leaked.
Yeah, but if you're a psychiatrist,
it's going to be very interesting.
If you got someone who had potentially threats, aren't you supposed to go to authorities?
Absolutely, but she didn't receive it before this actually happened.
Okay, David.
She received it. It only just came in.
Okay, David, last word.
It sat in the mailroom, tragically. But you know what, Eric? What is in that? My guess is the judge will examine it in camera and make a decision. But don't count on a jury ever seeing what's in that notebook.
All right, David, Wohl, and Rachel Self, what a tragic, tragic case. The alleged perpetrator, he's back in the court in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Well, coming up, a New York City police officer stripped of his gun and badge. The veteran of the force being questioned about a bizarre kidnapping plot. Stay tuned for that. And Governor Romney laying out his vision for U.S.-Israeli relations if